Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous Hour. My name is Dave, forever an alcoholic. And can we start off again, Billy, by saying a big thanks to yourself and everybody here at Black Country
It's always
Extra.
a pleasure.
That's lovely to invite us along yet again. We're shortly going to be introducing one of our members who is going to share their story with us. But before we do that, I'd like to ask Dec to read the preamble, which is what we read at the start of every meeting, which basically tells you very simply what AA is, what it does, and I guess what it doesn't do. So over to you, Dec.
Thanks, Dave. My name is Dec and I'm an alcoholic, and this is the AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other that they must solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
That's great, Dec. Thanks for that. And can we now get our guests today to introduce themselves, please?
Hi, my name's Debbie and I'm alcoholic.
Hi,
Welcome,
Debbie.
Debbie.
Welcome, and thanks for coming along today to share your experience, strength and hope with us. Lovely to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Can I ask you to start by giving us some idea about your background, where you're from, your childhood, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely, sure. So I grew up in Bewdley, which most of you lads know, beautiful little place, and I'm the youngest of three. I have a sister who's 3 years older and a brother who's 8 years older, and grew up, middle class family really. My mum was always a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked different jobs. He was in the auto business for a while, worked for Ford, this, that and the other. And, just nothing really, special. I think for me, whenever I reflect on my childhood, I always felt isolated and alone. Always, from a very, very, very young age. I remember being about 6 or 7 and almost feeling like I didn't even fit in with my family. I used to have a bedroom in the attic and I would sit in that window and it overlooked the countryside, in the distance. And even at such a young age, I just felt displaced. I felt like I didn't belong. And I always had this inquiring, inquisitive mind as a very young child about what was out in the world. Like there's got to be more than this. Like my mind, I had a very creative mind, and that always took me. I almost used to make stories in my head about these fantasy lands, about me traveling and seeing different things, and I always felt just very, very, like I said, that word isolated, and
Not part of.
yeah, not part of anything at all. And I remember going through school and just trying to fit in there, and I'd always try to latch on to the popular kids because I kind of wanted what they had. But then I spent most of my childhood walking in the shadows of my peers. I think I'd put it. And even then, just never feeling that I fitted in. And it's funny, people say, if people ask, I've had people over the years that I've shared openly with about being an alcoholic, do you think you were born an alcoholic? Has something happened to you in your life? For me, personally, I think my disease of alcoholism was a combination of things. We have it in the family. I think struggling with my childhood, I felt that I had my mother's, she's passed away now, bless her, but she was not a well woman. She had mental health issues, and it was never really addressed, throughout her life until shortly before she passed away. And I don't think that I received that nurturing that a child needs, in their formative years. And I always craved that. My father, love him to bits, but he was very kind of militant in his style of of parenting, and then my mom would have these cycles of ups and downs, and it's funny now because I recognise so much of myself, you know, from my mother. I'm very much like her. I have the bipolar like cycles, and I can kind of be on a bit of a roller coaster over the months, you know, can come and go. So yeah, I spent a lot of my childhood alone in nature. Nature for me has always been my sanctuary, not just physically being out in it, but nature has always been my spiritual sanctuary, and it's the place where even today is where I feel most comfortable, and that's where I do my prayer and meditation and reflect on my journey of life, my journey in recovery, and it's where I seem to get the answers the most, really.
So were mum and dad drinkers, big drinkers?
No, not at all. They'd have mum would have a glass of wine very, very occasionally, and dad would have a pint or two, I reckon, at the pub with his mates. And we had liquor, you know, we had alcohol in the house, and but.
And your siblings, your brother and sister?
No, not really. I don't really recall either of them. I recall my brother drinking more as he got into his kind of teens, but I wasn't really brought up surrounded with alcohol at all.
So tell us about when you had your first drink, then, when you got into it.
Oh, my first drink, yeah. I can remember that fateful day, very like it was yesterday, really. I would have been about 13, 14, and I was invited to a party by the popular kids, befriended by one of the popular girls, and I got invited. And I remember going, and I was riddled with anxiety and fear because it was the first real party that I'd been to and been invited to by these older kids, and I was nervous, thinking, you know, I'm going to feel stupid, or I'm going to say something stupid, or I'm not going to fit in. And I remember being at the party, and there was alcohol there, people were drinking. And I remember standing back, observing and watching, like I had done through most of my childhood. I was always an observer. I would be in the shadows, and I'd like to kind of, you know, watch everybody. And I remember there was a moment, and I just went wandering round the back of this beautiful house that we were in. The parents were away, and people having a good time. And my last memory of that evening was finding a really large bottle of Jack Daniels, really large bottle. I remember looking at it, and I vaguely remember opening it, and then blackout, total blackout. And my next my next realization, shall we put it, was I was in bed at home with my mother sat on the edge of the bed, looking at me in absolute, disgust, really. And I remember trying to sit up, and my head was pounding, and then I realized that I didn't really have any clothes on, and then I realised that I had blood on my face, and I don't really remember the conversation very much, but it was kind of indicated, this is not to be discussed, we will sweep this under the carpet. And the reason for that is that I don't remember any of it clearly, but my mother filled me in later and told me that they had been woken up. They were concerned I hadn't come home before midnight. They didn't really know where I was because I didn't tell them. And they were woken up early hours of that morning with the doorbell ringing, rushed down to see, wondering, is it the police? Is it, is Deborah okay? And I was pretty much naked. I think I had a pair of knickers on. And I was in a wheelbarrow covered in vomit, urine, blood, and
Good night.
Yeah, well, not so good, unfortunately. And several lads running off who had brought me down. And needless to say, it was very apparent what had happened that evening. And it's always very poignant for me that night, my first drink, because my last drink was exactly the same situation, and nothing changed in between all those years. Nothing at all. It was, So.
Wow. So, once you got over that, how did your drinking progress then over the time? So you were what, 13, 14?
Yeah, it progressed very, very, very quickly. Whilst I didn't particularly like how I felt with the hangover, I remember I took that night and I used that night as a form of attention, because I realised all of a sudden people were talking about me, you know, everyone at school, obviously there was gossip going around about what had happened to me, and, you know, I kind of thrived on that because it was the first time I really think I felt that I gained some attention, and I went with it because I thought, well, you know, I'm getting some attention now. And before I knew it, the drinking was going, you know, it was like meeting friends down by the river in Bewdley and drinking, and we'd buy the Mad Dog 2020 and we'd buy the cider and everything else. And we'd just sit by the river and we'd just get absolutely blottoed, you know. And that through high school was a weekend thing. The other thing that also escalated during this time was I was doing some very risky behaviour, using aerosols to get high, you know, and all these kind of things, solvents, you know. So for me, you know, by the age of 15, it was a regular occurrence for me to be sneaking out of school with a friend or two, getting high, or sneaking out of the house on a weekend night and going to pubs. I think I had fake ID at one point. I had fake ID to get into the pub. So, and it just escalated very, very, very quickly. And it would be, I'd always be looking forwards to the weekend thinking, oh, you know, looking forwards to getting smashed. And the hangovers were just awful, but it never stopped me. It never stopped me because I just needed that relief from self. I needed that quick fix. I needed that time to escape from my thoughts, my feelings, and that separation and void from the rest of the world that I was feeling. Alcohol is the only thing to this day that has ever really, you know, got me out of self, really, which is why I used it. Yeah.
So how did when did you get to the stage where you realised that you were drinking more than your friends, and perhaps you were different to them?
I don't think I had that realisation or that clarity myself. I think it was brought to my attention by family and friends.
Right.
You know, Deb would always want to go the extra mile. I always was the last one out drinking, you know. I'd never want to leave. And if my friends had left a pub at such and such time, I'd find total strangers to go and finish off my drinking with, you know. I always wanted just to... I was always pushing the boundaries under the influence of alcohol. Whereas when I was not drinking, I was quite meek and mild and quite timid and shy and reserved. But alcohol for me, it was my alter ego, I guess. It was an alter ego where I could just let go and just be free and just, you know, live out a life that as a child I'd projected as fantasies in my head.
Just lifts you, doesn't it? It changes the way you feel.
Yeah,
that's right.
the psychic change.
So, what sort of age were you then when you were sort of realising that, you know, maybe it is I'm a bit different to my friends? And
I would say things for me. I had things for me about. I think I was 21. I'd moved to London at a point. I'd been to art school after high school, and I went to Worcester for a couple of years, and then I'd always had this dream of being a singer. I'd always loved music, and music had always been such an escape for me, other than alcohol, but music always felt like a safe space, and I always had this dream, and I used to tell my family I want to be a singer, and da-da-da-da. I had these dreams, hopes and aspirations of being, you know, really successful. So I moved to London at 20, actually, to fulfill that dream. And I got straight into the music industry, and I was very successful very young. I had a recording contract by 21, and that was going to be a catalyst for a lot of things. And a lot of work was put in by myself, my bandmates, and the record company. And my drinking was escalating. Needless to say, being in that industry, you're kind of put into you know, for an alcoholic, it's paradise, because it's always there, it's always abundant. Everyone was drinking, the parties and the gigs and everything else. It just went hand in hand. And I remember thinking during that time, it's like, oh my God, I've arrived. Look at this. I'm doing a career where I'm allowed to drink and it's okay. And this is just brilliant. This is brilliant. This is brilliant. So yeah, that was a turning point for me, because I sabotaged that record deal because of my drinking. And it wasn't so much of my drinking, it was more to do with my behaviour and those parts of me that drink masked, that when the drink was out of the system and the party was over, I was still left with me. I was still left with Deb, who didn't really know who she was, that still didn't fit in and didn't really know her way in the world.
Right. And had you come to realisation that you were drinking too much? Had you ever tried to stop just by yourself or with other agencies at all?
No, not at all. No, not at all. My drinking, it's strange. When I came into AA many years later, I always struggled with accepting I was an alcoholic, because I was a binge drinker. I was always a binge drinker. You know, that started off just weekends, and then it would be a night or two in the week. But I could always stop, and if my hangovers were too bad, I could go for 5-6 days without a drink. But the difference there is, during those, if say 4, 5, 6 days without a drink, I was obsessing and constantly thinking about when I was going to go out next and get drunk. So the disease, whilst I wasn't drinking, that part of the disease was always with me, constantly thinking or getting all my hopes and dreams on that next event and just getting excited and thinking, oh, I can't wait to go out on that night, and always thinking I'm going to get blottoed. And I always knew that I was going to get blotted. There was never any denial about that. It was always a conscious decision, conscious act to go out and get drunk. And as the years went on, the consequences got worse, as many of us know. But I didn't care. I didn't care about the consequences, because by that point I didn't care if I was alive or dead. Yeah, I really didn't care. So I put myself in some very, very dangerous situations, and as a result I've experienced some horrible things, which, you know, but it was never enough to stop my drinking at that point. I wasn't ready.
No. Well, you've got to be ready, haven't we? I think we're ready for you. We're ready for your first record.
Yes. The song choices are always interesting on this programme. So Candy Staton. So is there a relevance? Well, there's always a relevance to a song. So what's the Candy Staton link?
Yeah, this song for me is my all-time go-to favourite song when I need to perk myself up. And every time I put it on, I play it really loud. And it's only ever at home. And I dance like a lunatic. Every single time. I mean, I'm up and jumping up and down. I'm screaming the lyrics out, and for me, this is a piece of music that fills my soul.
Okay, so we're gonna have a bit of dancing in the studio now. Have a bit of dancing. Turn it up.
I always sing to it.
Sometimes I feel like throwing my hands up in the air. I know I can count on you. Sometimes I feel like saying, Lord, I just don't care. But you've got the love I need to see me through. Sometimes it seems the going is just too rough, and things go wrong no matter what I do. Now and then I feel like life is just too much, but you've got the love I need to see me through. When food is gone, you are my daily
The best in news, views and debate. The best in local music and sport. Black Country Radio. It's all about you.
Thanks, thanks, Bill. That was a lovely track, Debbie. We're waiting for you to dance around and show us how this affects you. But
only in the privacy of my own home for this one.
Okay.
It's like she's one of those folks when you're listening to the radio too, and they go, the kids are late for school because they were playing, and I'm just dancing around the kitchen. I should have took them 10 minutes ago.
There you go. Okay, so I think before the break you were telling us how it was a regular. You were a binge drinker.
Yep.
And it was, you could stop for 5 or 6 days, couldn't stay stopped, and
Yep.
you were looking forward to that next binge. It was a deliberate state of mind, really, you wanted to get into. So, what made you get to the stage where you thought, hang on, we can't go on doing this. I'm drinking too much, and life is going down the toilet, as we say.
Well,
Have you not got there yet?
No, I mean, for this alcoholic, I never had that realization and clarity. My introduction to AA was through the court system in America. I'd moved. Yeah, it was court ordered. I spent many years doing geographicals with the music. Working in hotels, cabaret singer, and this, that, and the other, and wedding bands, and I've lost count of how many countries I've done geographicals to. And for me, I've always called myself the queen of geographicals because literally I would do 6 months in one country, and then soon as people were figuring me out, or I was discontent, I'd go and literally move to another country.
Wow.
It was that drastic for me.
Yeah.
In order to get out of my sense of self, I did that for many, many years. And again, being in that industry, in the hotels, I was able to drink on the job. It was just great. And this went on for many, many years. And lived all over the world, Australia for a few years, this, that, and the other. And I went back to London, actually, after I kind of burnt my bridges in Australia. And I met my ex-husband in London. He was a record producer, and I was signing to his record label. And we, a couple of years after we were together, we got very unexpectedly pregnant with my daughter, Parker. And I didn't drink during my pregnancy, but I was very aware. I didn't even at that point thinking about my drink. I just knew I'm pregnant, I can't drink. But in my psyche during the pregnancy, it was coming to more light and clarity to me about me thinking about my mental health and my behavioural patterns, and really having some clarity about just how discontent I still was in the world. And I think this came to light because I had to go, I was 8 months during my pregnancy, I had to go 8 months without alcohol. So I think having those 8 months away from drinking, it gave me time for thinking. Drinking was gone, the thinking came in. And that's when the seeds in me were coming in that, hold on a minute, you're spending your whole life blaming everybody else for your unhappiness or for failing you or for not feeling loved. Maybe it's you. That's when it really kind of came in. Yeah. But after Parker was born, I went straight back to it. Went straight back to the drink. Yeah, I went straight back to the drinking. But around that time, I decided that I didn't want to be in London anymore, and I wanted another geographical, and persuaded Parker's father to move. So we got a job opportunity in America, in Connecticut, just outside Manhattan. And we moved out there, and I honestly thought, like so many times before, this is it. I've got a little baby. We're gonna go. We're gonna have all this money. We were being put up in this beautiful house, big cars. Living by the beach. Private schools for Parker. And I just thought, that's it. Got there. Yeah. Oh my goodness, it was just. I had a sense of loneliness at that point that I'd never felt in my life before. And even this little person that I love so much, she couldn't fill that void. She couldn't fill that void. And I always think about, we're born into this world alone and we leave this world alone, and everything in between. we have our own destiny to fill it, you know. It's a bit like I always think about, you know, I thought, you know, about some people are lucky, you know. I used to think, oh, their lives are great. They you know, God, they must have had such good luck. I don't believe in luck. I think luck is when good preparation meets the moment of opportunity, and you take those things and you run with them and you take advantage of them. So for me, just things were creeping in, and I was becoming more and more depressed, and my anxiety disorder was coming in, and it was around that time I became very, very ill. So that kind of put a hold on a lot of my emotional stuff, because then my focus was on to being well and to live, you know, being able to live, because I was very sick. But it was around this time also that I remember I had a portacath for treatment for a year in my heart, and I remember Parker's dad and I, we used to like to party together a lot, and we had a babysitter on call, and the babysitter would come on a Friday night, and we wouldn't come home till a Sunday sometimes, and we'd just leave our daughter with the babysitter. And I remember a key point of being out with friends camping for a weekend whilst leaving Parker with her father, that, you know, selfish to the core. And I remember there was a photo actually someone took of me, and I'm sat under a tree drinking alcohol with my IV bag of IV antibiotics hung on the tree, going into my arm, and I'm drinking alcohol. I mean, if that's not the definition of insanity. But that's the thing. Alcohol was always king, wasn't it? It was more important than me trying to get well from this illness, and just laughing about it, you know, as usual, just kind of brushing it away, like, you know. And I think I'd had such suicidal tendencies by that point that I think, again, like I said before, I'd like to push the boundaries, because I didn't really care about the outcome, and and things like that, drinking whilst on those particular medications in itself, you know, so dangerous. And I think just pushing, because deep down I didn't want to live. I didn't want to live.
So you mentioned earlier on that you got into treatment because of court order in America. Yep. So what happened to get you to that stage?
Yeah, it's a day that changed everything for me. I was driving my daughter to school, and I had to go on the big I-95 interstate. It's a massive 5-lane, you know, what they call freeways over there. And it was half an hour each way, back and forth to this school. And, you know, I always used to think I never drove with Parker in the car, but how many times I was hungover, way over the limit, you know. I only accepted that in AA after hearing other women share that, you know. And so that particular morning, I was driving and I was deeply depressed. I had been looking and thinking about committing suicide. I'd gone out to a lake to find out where I was going to drown myself. I'd looked at where I was going to hide the rope. I'd scoped out by diving in the lake to find out where I could find a spot deep enough to drown myself. And I'd been writing suicide notes for my daughter, for her birthdays, for her wedding and everything else. And in my mind, I was going to do it. But that particular morning, I was driving on the motorway, and I had this moment as we were coming out of, deadlock traffic. I just thought, in my head, I was screaming like, I can't do this anymore. I can't live anymore like this. I'm in so much pain. And then I had that moment, like so many times before, that had stopped me, which had probably stopped me and saved my life, was I cannot leave this child behind. How is she going to feel growing up knowing that her own mother didn't love her enough to save herself? So I had a fleeting thought of, well, I want to kill myself, but I don't want to leave this child behind. So, sorry. So I started speeding the car up, and I thought I'd just kill us both. That would be the way out. And I always get told this so many times, but it's still very, very hard. And I focused on a point ahead, a tree, and I'm just going to drive into it. I'm just going to drive into it. But I didn't. and I pulled over on the verge of the motorway, and I called Parker's dad and I said, I need help. You need to come and get your daughter. I nearly just killed us both. And I was put into a psychiatric hospital that day for evaluation.
Right.
So, yeah.
So, and did that evolve into the court?
That involved into the courts, yeah. That involved into the courts, and I was court ordered for AA for a year. I wasn't allowed to see Parker, unaided by a court ordered, a chaperone, from the court. And it's just obviously Parker's father filed for divorce, and I remember stood in the courtroom and being told, essentially, you're an unfit mother. And I remember thinking and saying, yes, I'm not well enough to parent this child, and I am very happy to give up custody for a year or however long it takes. And I was told that I had to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. Yeah. And I had a sheet that from a caseworker, social worker, that I had to get filled out at every meeting. That was. So
that was your introduction.
That was
to
my
AA.
introduction, into
and
AA.
how was it your first? I mean, you didn't want to be there, obviously, but how was it when you first got in there?
It's interesting. It's not that I didn't want to be there. I think at this point I'd accepted that I needed help.
Right.
I had accepted that I was drinking too much, but I hadn't until my first meeting accepted that I was an alcoholic. And I remember walking into that meeting and I was so nervous, but I was so welcomed. I don't think I've ever felt so put at ease so quickly. And I remember being told to, listen to the similarities, not the differences. I remember being told just to, just at the end you can share. And I listened, and I just remembered thinking, oh my goodness, I'm not alone. I'm not alone in any of this. And at the end of the meeting, I listened so carefully. I remember listening really, really carefully. And at the end of the meeting, they said, is there anything you want to share? And I said, I'm Debbie, an alcoholic. And I'd shared a little bit about how I'd come into AA. And that was it for me. And from that day on, I threw myself into it, with service work. I was doing 2 meetings a day some days.
Funny.
Because I needed it. I needed
it.
I needed it.
Yeah, you felt as if you belonged there.
It was just so broken by that point that it was just... It was filling up that hole in my soul gradually, and I was, I could feel it doing something. I could remember feeling okay, and I can remember that feeling of being a part of something. And the biggest thing for me, it was the first time I felt that I wasn't really judged by anyone. There was no judgment in the rooms of AA ever, and the women of AA just, oh my goodness, they just literally they helped me through that first year.
It gives you that hope, doesn't it?
It did. I had hope.
That sense of belonging, as you say. Nobody judges you.
No.
And nobody diagnoses you as an alcoholic. No. That's down to you.
Yeah.
To decide for yourself, isn't it? And it's kind of... So, can you tell us how long it is since your last drink?
Yes, 15 years.
Wow.
15 years.
Wow, well done. Well done.
It's 15 years, but I haven't always been sober emotionally. My recovery has been difficult in the sense that I've made it very difficult for myself. It's only really in the last 18 months that I feel that I've gained some real total sobriety, and there's many reasons for that actually that I've identified. One of the biggest things is that identifying I'm a very codependent person and always been in back-to-back relationships my whole life. And whilst I came into AA and put the booze down, I was still doing back-to-back relationships. So I never allowed myself that space to breathe, to get to know who I was. I was still filling a part of me in relationships, very unhealthy relationships some of the time as well, one after another. And I think that was a big part for me. And the other thing is that I didn't work the steps as I was so, encouraged to do from the onset. I didn't work the steps properly. And I was holding so much resentment against myself for what I put my child through. And I was holding so much resentment about some of my actions around my being a mother to my daughter. I hadn't let those go because I hadn't done the steps properly, especially a step 4, you know.
Okay, I think we're ready for your next record now, Debbie.
Yep. Adam Lambert, not the Tears for Fears version.
No.
So as this, it's got to be the voice, isn't it?
It's the voice, and it's just I identified this song. You know, I feel like I do live in a mad world, and I
Don't
was
we
feeling
all?
a little bit, yeah. You know, the world is mad, but this comforts me to know. It makes me feel a part of something. There's other people there that feel the same.
Great. Let's listen to this then. Adam Lambert.
All around me are familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for the daily races, going nowhere, and the tears are filling up their glasses, no expression. No expression. Hide my head, I wanna drown my sorrow. No tomorrow, no tomorrow. And I find it kinda funny, I find it kinda sad. But dreams in which I'm dying are the best I ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Children waiting for the day they feel good. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Made to feel the way that every child should. Sit and listen, sit and listen. I went to school and I was very nervous. No one knew me, no one knew me. Hello teacher, tell me what's my lesson. Look right through me, look right through me. I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Mad world. Black Country Extra.
Thanks for that, Billy. That's a lovely track, Debbie. Really nice one. Before we start again, we're going to ask Deck to give us some of the contact details for people out there that want to get in touch with us.
Cheers, Dave. Thanks for that. Yeah, there's numerous ways to contact us, as always. If you just Google Alcoholics Anonymous UK, the top search will be our home website. And if you click on that link, it takes you to a lovely homepage which has got all the information and the ways to contact us. You can contact us on the free phone number, which is in there, which is 0800 9177 650. That's 0800 9177 650. There's also an email address if you prefer to contact us that way, which is help@aamail.org. You've also got to find a meeting if you do feel that you'd like to attend, in case you are struggling a little bit. And all you've got to do is put in your town or your postcode and the day of the week, and it'll tell you all the meetings that's within a short distance. And there is one more way, which is an important one, which is the chat, where you can actually type into a box, and a real human being will type back to you, and you can have a
A
conversation.
real
with them.
human being.
A real human being, not a fake bot from India. And there are other countries in the world that use fake bots. Yeah, so if anybody is struggling, please do contact us in any of the ways mentioned.
Whoops. Oh, dear me, dear me.
It's the truth.
Okay. Right, moving on. So, Debbie, you told us just before the break that you had 15 years without a drink.
Yeah.
Did you ever imagine you'd get that length of sobriety under your belt?
I don't think I've ever really projected anything onto about my hopes and aspirations of not drinking, you know. I think because I threw myself into AA so much from the very beginning, and the amount of meetings I've done over the years, I've seen all too well about people being cocky, thinking or saying, you know, I'll never drink again, I've got really good sobriety and stuff. I've seen people with 30 plus sobriety over the years that have relapsed and picked up another drink, you know, over not even massive things. It's primarily because they've pulled away from meetings. They're not reaching out when they're struggling, they're isolating. So for me, I never really thought about it. I think I'd put it more into like, not only just as a day at a time, but I just thought, oh, another year at a time. Or I'd reflect after the year, like most of us do, but I'd just be like, okay, I've got another year. There's hope that I can get another year. Always having hope, but never...
But just keeping it in the day.
Yeah,
one
keeping
day
it
at
in
a
the
time.
day, really.
Yeah. So, talk to us about how your life has changed since you got into AA.
Yeah, it's changed massively. First of all, I think a key point to point out is that I obviously was sober for the first year of sobriety and rebuilding a relationship, you know, with my daughter, who at that point, you know, she'd kind of been traumatised by mum being away so much. She also had a new stepmom at the time that had transpired very quickly. So it was very difficult for her. And I had to go back to the courts basically at the end of the year for her dad to say, you know, Deborah's been doing this, handing all the paperwork, this, that and the other, that I'd done therapy, had my drugs and alcohol screening test regularly. And the judge was like, you know, and her dad would like, you know, you can get custody back now. Yeah. And I actually looked straight over at my then ex-husband and looked at the judge and said, I'm not ready, I need another year. Wow. I knew I wasn't ready. I knew because of AA, because of all the things that I'd witnessed by other people rushing sobriety and rushing getting back into relationships in early sobriety and all the things that can trip us up. I knew I wasn't ready, so I asked for another year, which I got. And I think it's one of the best things I did, to be honest.
That's brave.
Yeah, just identified that I still wasn't ready to provide my child with the mother that she needed to be. And when I was going to be ready to go back, I wanted to be that mother that I'd always hoped to be and that she needed.
Yeah. I suppose what AA's given you over that period of time is that clarity of mind to take. That's a fairly drastic decision, isn't it?
It is.
Take, but hey,
yeah.
well done for that.
And it gives us identification and clarity that we know when we're not ready for certain things. I love that about AA. You know, not only do we get that from the steps and people's shares, but we have our fellows that if we're not certain about something, or if we're struggling, or we're looking at a new job, or you know, buying a new house or anything like that, we have our friends in AA, our fellows, you know, to run those things by, because as alcoholics, we can be quite flighty and we can make rush decisions, and decision thinking on our own, it never got us in good places in the beginning, does it? So I run pretty much everything by my sponsor and my friends in AA. If I'm not sure, I ask someone.
Somebody, because there's always somebody been there, done it, got the T-shirt, hasn't there, before you?
Yeah, always.
So you got another year.
I did get another year, yeah.
Did you then get custody back of your daughter?
I did. I got custody back, and as things transpired, her father's alcoholism and drugs addiction got worse, and he went downhill, as I had previously. I started going up and he was going down. And what transpired eventually is that, you know, I would kind of had Parker full time, and unfortunately, for many years, due to his disease and other choices that he made, he was no longer in mine or my daughter's life, whilst he was on his journey and what he had to do to you know, do whatever he needed to do. Really, is like many of us, test the waters, push the boundaries, think everything's going to be different the next time, but it never is.
No.
So
It's funny that, isn't it? Keeps
yeah,
keep doing the same thing you get and expect different results, and it doesn't work that way, does it?
Yeah,
That's
so
insane.
I became a single mom. So, and it was the women of AA that helped me, taught me to become a mother, really, a proper mother, and what I needed to do. And there were times when I was homeless with Park. I was working 3 jobs. We were homeless, and we'd move in with women in AA, and they'd take us in. And, you know, I was sober. I was doing the best I could. I wasn't always doing it perfect, but I never picked up a drink, which is the main thing.
Yeah, absolute
Never
miracle,
picked up
isn't
a
it?
drink.
Absolute miracle. So you've had 15 years in it. Have you seen things change, particularly in AA in that time? I mean, I don't know how America compares with the UK.
Yeah, America's very different in their approach to it. You know, and I think I was very blessed where in Connecticut, where I lived, I think there were 15, 16 meetings just in that town, every kind you could imagine.
Yeah.
Any time of the day, you know, they had set up AA buildings built by donations from people in the fellowship and families. They'd set up these little AA huts with a kitchen, toilet, and a meeting room, and they were dotted all over the place, so really spoilt. I think for me, the biggest thing I've seen and the most beautiful thing I've seen in my time in the fellowship is the younger people coming in and the connection and the, you know, that just the way younger people seem to be getting it and building these little subdivisions within themselves outside of the rooms on a social aspect. That for me, there seems to be a lot more happening outside of AA. Last night I was with a bunch of great people dancing like lunatics to a Meatloaf tribute band, you know. We were drinking Red Bull and water, and we were the most raucous bunch there, you know. I mean, everyone must have been looking. I remember people looking at us at one point, and I must have been thinking, oh, you know, God, they're all drunk. And I love that, you know. So for me, that social aspect of the fellowship in AA is so imperative, because we only have, most people can only fit in, you know, however many meetings a week, you know, busy lives, this, that, and the other. That's an hour of 24 hours a day. So you've got that hour to get your spirituality, to get that sobriety top up. The rest of the time we're on our own, and you know, for me, I've just really tried to encompass my social life outside of AA, because I need that nourishment, I need that nurturing outside of the meetings. And I don't really have many friends outside of AA anymore, to be honest. We don't relate to old friends anymore, and people that aren't in the fellowship. I don't know, it's just like small talk. And I love that in AA, there's no small talk. We're direct, we're honest, we say it like it is, we call each other out on our stuff. If we see someone going off path, we're going to pull that person in so quickly. And brutal honesty in AA is what has helped me stay sober. Brutal honesty. People calling me out when I can't call myself out. I'm not capable sometimes of calling myself out. That's one of my defects. That's one of my isms. I don't know sometimes when I am doing right or wrong things, even in sobriety. I'll admit that.
Well, it is encouraging, as you said to me, to see so many young people come in. I wish I'd been that smart when I was young. Could have saved myself a fortune. You know, you just wish I could have got it probably 20 years before I did. And have got into the fellowship and on the road, which it's lovely to see. It's lovely to see. So you're living proof, Debs, that there is another satisfying and enjoyable life after drinking. What would you say to people out there maybe listening who are wondering about their own drinking behaviour? What they should do about that?
As we always know, as we know and we always say in meetings, no one can ever diagnose anyone as or pinpoint someone's being an alcoholic. That's down to the individual. I think for me, the number one thing that characterizes really, this is only for me, I speak for me, is about my drinking, is that if there's consequences to your drinking, whether that's financially, physically, spiritually, emotionally, if there's constant consequences, they're very, very prevalent, and those consequences are getting worse and worse. You know, that's time to think about, okay, maybe there is an issue here. And I would just say to anybody, really, you know, if you're feeling alone, you're having consequences to drinking, it's only going to get worse. And AA is a place that's available anytime. You know, we've got the online stuff too, if people aren't comfortable going to a physical meeting. But for me, just to know that you're not alone, there's help out there. You know, it may or may not be for you, but what have you got to lose for an hour of your time? That hour of your time, that hour of people's time has saved so many lives, because that hour was all some people needed to have that little spark of clarity, that little spark of identification, like, oh, maybe I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. That's great advice.
Nearly there.
Nearly there.
Another fascinating programme.
That flew by. So before we go on to your last record, Dave, just a huge thanks for you to coming along today and taking the time, and for your openness. And I get quite emotional myself here.
Sorry, Dave.
your
I've made
openness
many
and your
men
honesty.
cry over the years.
I know. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been an absolute privilege.
thank you for
so
having me.
much. And we're ready for your last record?
We're going out on a classic. It's Eva Cassidy, obviously the
is.
voice again.
It is,
and
yeah.
the song. What a fantastic song.
Yeah.
Well, on behalf of the radio, it's an absolute privilege, honestly, to sit here and listen to your stories. And you're welcome anytime
Thank
at
you.
all. So we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. And here's the very wonderful Eva Cassidy and Over the Rainbow.
Somewhere over the rainbow way, up high in a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow skies, a blue wind, the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me. Where troubles melt like lemon drops, oh, way above the chimney tops, that's where you find me.
and wake up where the clouds are far behind me. Where troubles melt like lemon drops, oh, way above the chimney tops, that's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue.